Now, I also attempted to define morality, and I used my dictionary, and I found their definitions unsatisfactory. First, I looked at morality, and it said the quality of being moral. So the word moral, number one, says of or concerned with the judgment or instruction of goodness or badness of character and behavior. Now, it doesn't say how you determine what was good and what was bad. They just, I guess, assume that once you know what's good and bad, then you must behave that way. Their second definition said conforming to established standards of good behavior, which is essentially what you found. Number three said arising from conscience. I don't know what that means. I mean, I know the words. And then their fourth definition of moral said having psychological rather than tangible effects. Now,
well,
do we understand what morality is?
Yes, I understand what morality is when I use the word. But see, that what you're saying is here's somebody who's looking at the way other people use the word, and obviously, to me anyway, they have various usages. So you're not going to come across a uniform definition of the word. Now, I want to bring in here something that I mentioned to you earlier about this, and that's a man named Kohlberg, Lawrence Kohlberg, who was a sociologist, and he studied moral development in different people around the world, different religions, non-religious, whatever. And he determined there were 6 levels of moral development, according to him. And he broke it down into 3 groupings. I just want to summarize them briefly because they come up when you have a discussion without realizing that you may be talking about one level and somebody else may be operating from a different level. The lowest level, the first level, like childhood level, he calls pre-conventional. The lowest level has to do with obedience and punishment. You don't do something because you're going to get whacked. Or you do something because you're going to get rewarded immediately. Okay, you don't park downtown in the French Quarter because you're going to get a ticket.
But
that's the lowest level.
Isn't that how most people acquire their morals from their parents?
It could be. You get it from your parents. The second part of that is self-interest. You do what's in your self-interest. That's more American in some ways. The next level is called conventional agreement. Interpersonal accord and conformity, being good or being bad within the culture. Here, if you happen to be, and I'm using a prejudicial idea probably, if you happen to be a gypsy, and I'm going to put that in quotes because I'm sure all gypsies are this way, you're brought up to believe that stealing from gages, the non-gypsies, is the moral thing to do, to trick them and lie to them and steal from them. That's what you do if you're a good gypsy. Okay?
Yes.
Now, forgive me any gypsies that are watching because I know this is not true across the board. The second level of that has to do with law and order, and that's the highest the Republicans ever get to. Okay, law and order. It's the law, therefore we should do it. If it's not the law, it's permissible. That's the frame of reference.
Without distinguishing between legality and morality?
If the law is in the best interest of everybody concerned. They just there's no distinction in their mind between what's moral and what's legal. So back in civil rights days, they would say you can't go sit in because it's against the law. If you're a good person, you don't sit in.
And I don't know who I'm quoting, but someone said, just because you have the right to do something doesn't mean that it's right to do it. So isn't there a distinction between legality and morality?
That would be a higher level of thinking, which you're referring to here. The highest level is called post-conventional. Okay, now you're motivated by what's best for the interest of of everybody. Everybody meaning even other people that are like yourself. So if you're opposed to slavery, let's say, you're operating for a higher level. Then the highest level, according to him, was that they're universal ethical principles that are across the board. Universal, they're across the board. And here's where you get into things like murder, perhaps incest, I'd have to think about that, but certainly murder is wrong across the board. It's immoral across the board. However, throwing the fat man off the bridge raises some questions with some people's minds, whether murder is always, certainly right now. I just watched a documentary about the Holocaust in America. The State Department refused to endorse saving the Jews from Nazi Germany because it would cause problems in this country. Okay? They stood in the way, delayed the visas and all that. And it would be more boys going over there and dying, just like right now in Iraq.
Now, what you're saying is that the people who just made that decision in this country
Yes.
were acting immorally? Is that what you're
They
saying?
were not acting according to the highest principles. Any more than if you support in slavery, you're operating on the highest principles. You're operating on about
In
level
other words,
4.
you're
which
saying
says,
that morality has degrees of highness. Some
Yes.
morals are higher than other morals.
some people are more developed in their moral thinking than others.
Well, how is
Yes.
that determined? Which are the highest?
Because you have an expert professor who determines it, obviously. No, that's what philosophers do. They think about these questions. Okay?
All right.
In a minute, I'll read you a similar problem here, and you'll see what I'm
All
talking
right.
about. It's a
Okay.
little
Now,
more
what I
complex. I'm gonna do it right
what I
now.
would like us to do before we run out of
Yes.
the time is to discuss some of the existing religions and how they practice morality, which may not be the same as how they teach it. And I would like to at least get that into the mix. Anyone want to suggest? We've already offended the gypsies, but we might as well take it. We might as well take it the rest of the way. How about Islam and the Quran, which in some place says that they should, not only is it permissible, but I think they are obligated to kill the infidels. Would you say that murder is still immoral for Islam, but killing infidels is not murder?
It's not murder. No, it's a jihad. It's a holy duty.
Right. But I think that is what am I trying to say? That's a conception that comes from within Islam. There are those within Islam who disagree with that whole concept.
That is
because they
true.
don't read it that way.
But
It's an interpretation.
Oh, but it's the words are in the holy book.
And they say it just means those infidels who are acting against Islam.
Well, what about in the Old Testament for the Judeo-Christian religion, where
Where you sell your daughters into slavery
if a woman if there's some infidelity, you stone a woman to death.
That's the good idea. But listen,
that's not murder.
no, it's not murder. It's punishment.
So, in other words, you can redefine even your high principles.
Yes.
You can redefine the words to suit what you want to do.
It's the same thing as right now with people who are against the death penalty. Those of us who are against the death penalty see it as murder, but it's not against the law. And it's the same thing with stoning a woman to death for being...
The assumption here is that Connie is operating on a higher level of ethics and morality.
Thank you, Lane.
Well, this is my belief. I'm not saying it's right.
Higher than whom?
Higher than yours.
I thought that's what you were about to say.
For example, you talk about the Old Testament. God told King Saul to go out and kill all the Amorites, all their women, all their children, all their cattle. Well, he went out and didn't mind killing the people and didn't mind killing the women and the children, but he couldn't see himself killing perfectly good cattle. So he brought them back home, and God punished him for not obeying him, not for killing the women and children, but for bringing the cattle home and not obeying him.
Okay, but aside from the behavior of God, I'm concerned with the behavior of people who adopt some set of morals and then apparently
you're talking
act differently.
You're talking about preachers now.
Well, most of them, but some of their followers as well.
Yeah. Hypocrites.
Well, what about some of the other religions of the world? What about Buddhism? Or do they practice what they preach?
I think Buddhists do. I think Buddhists are totally nonviolent.
Well, violence is only one form of bad behavior. What about, you mentioned stealing? Is it okay to steal?
From non-Buddhists.
And of course, in the Judeo-Christian, it's a sin to covet thy neighbor's, whatever your neighbor has.
But it's not a sin to steal. That's not mentioned.
I know no person, nobody, no matter how religious they are or not, who doesn't covet.
Even Jimmy Carter.
Come on, that's right. He admitted he coveted.
He admitted it.
But he did. He didn't take action on it.
Lusted in his heart.
Well, and lust is a bad thing.
Even those who, according to Lanny, hold the universal ethical principles, the highest principles.
Covet.